whole question of biodiversity and the preservation of the natural environment is a very critical component of our survival in the British Virgin Islands, because the economy in the British Virgin Islands is based primarily on financial services and tourism. And in large part, our tourism is based on the environment, because 70 to 80% of our visitors visit the country to enjoy the waters, the natural marine environment. And so the preservation of our marine environment is critical to our survival.
I've never been to somewhere quite as stunning as the British Virgin Islands. The seas are gorgeous and the coral reefs are stunning. How concerned are you that issues like ocean acidification and the warming of waters will see those irreparably damaged?
Very concerned. In fact, earlier this year, we hosted a conference they put on primarily with the Joint Nature Conservative Council and the BVI government to discuss the whole question of the conservation of the near shore and marine environment. And the whole impetus for that is to ensure that we maintain what we have and do not destroy it. We're very concerned about coral bleaching. We're very concerned about the destruction of our mangrove. Very concerned about the quality of the water surrounding the islands. And before it gets to a point where it's irreversible, we want to ensure that we put in motion all necessary factors that are necessary to ensure that we don't suffer in the long term.
How concerned are you when incidents like the Gulf of Mexico BP disaster occur, which could impact on you indirectly? How much power do you have to control the exploitation of the seas around you?
Well, we don't have, I don't think we have power per se in the real sense. Well, what we do have is soft power, because we can spread the gospel. And because part and parcel of our tourism market is somewhat upmarket, what we will do is encourage our visitors to spread the word that the preservation of the natural environment is critical to our survival. But it's also important for our visitors, because visitors want to come again, they want to encourage others to come to enjoy it. I think it's a fair statement if I was supposed to say that we have been designated one of the sailing capitals of the world, and probably the sailing capital of the Caribbean. And so it's critical that we pay attention to ensuring that we maintain that, to ensure long-term survival of our people.
There appear to be moves this week to see a number of areas, marine areas around the world protected. I think the figure the IUCN were talking about was 120. Are these issues that the British Virgin Islands would be supporting?
Absolutely. In fact, we are partly sponsored by the IUCN to attend this conference, and it is in recognition of some of the work that we are doing to conserve nature in its general sense. One of the things that is quite interesting is that we are one of the first countries in the wider Caribbean to have established a climate change policy. And as we speak, we are working diligently to establish our climate change trust fund, through which funds can be channeled both regionally and internationally to help in the whole conservation of nature, the whole preservation of the environment, and work diligently towards environmental sustainability.
And tell me a bit about the soft power you just mentioned, because while the British Virgin Islands may be small, you mentioned the number of influential people we know who visit there. I think Richard Branson is probably one of the most famous from the UK, but also the many other island states around the world which often build coalitions together to really influence bigger states. Tell me a bit about the soft power and whether you think it's effective in forums like this.
Well, I think it's important and effective in a number of ways, but to go back a little bit in time, for instance, the modern day tourism in the British Virgin Islands got its start with the establishment of the Little Licks Bay Resort on Virgin Gorda, which was built by Rockefeller. And Rockefeller, when he came visiting the islands back in the late 50s, early 60s, he bought several properties both in the United States Virgin Islands and the British Virgin Islands, which he subsequently donated to the national parks. In fact, as recently as within the last 3 to 5 years, there were 2 small islands that he had purchased some 40 years ago that he has now returned to the care and keeping of the British Virgin Islands through the National Parks Trust. And so over the years, with friends of that quality and of that prominence, now with the presence of Sir Richard Branson, who owns 2 islands in the British Virgin Islands, and for the most part has made it his home. He himself has taken up the challenge. He is helping to spearhead the Caribbean Challenge Initiative, which is a forum that will be held next year, May 18th and 19th, in the British Virgin Islands, co-hosted primarily by the government of Grenada and the government of the British Virgin Islands, and co-sponsored by Sir Richard Branson, in which 9 heads of government of the English-speaking Caribbean have come together and agreed that within the next several years they are going to commit to ensuring that 20% of the marine environment is conserved. And this is a very good example of private-public partnership spearheaded by Sir Richard. So in the context of soft power, what it is saying is that with people who have influence and can get things done, the BVI can co-partner with them. And that whole concept of public-private partnership can then enhance the whole question of environmental sustainability for the long term.
Absolutely. And a final question, really. I mean, how important do you think it could be if conferences like this, I know they cost millions to host, but were staged in countries and small islands which really are feeling the effects of climate change and of biodiversity loss at the moment?
Well, the Caribbean Challenge Initiative that will be hosted next year is a good example, and in fact, what will happen, I think, it's going to be a conference that brings together the concept is to bring together the 9 heads of government along with 15 CEOs of major corporations, along with major media outlets from throughout the world in the British Virgin Islands. And that conference, coming out of that, then we can see what are the positives and what are the negatives, build on the positives, enhance the negatives, and then, as you ask, see how this can then be expanded to various regions throughout the world to bring broader perspective and recognition for the work that island states are doing to help ensure that they sustain and survive for the long term.